Hey everyone, welcome back to Questioning Constructs. I'm Rebecca, and this is.
What's going on, y'all? It's John. We gotta get to a point where we no longer have to introduce ourselves. We have to
We
get a
could
group of people surrounding us so we can just jump in and just talk. I
we
feel
could
like
probably just say, "Hey, it's Questioning
you
Constructs."
know what? I feel like because it's a video, we still have to introduce ourselves. But like, I feel like if we get an opportunity to move to live streaming, like we'll be able
Yeah.
to just jump on stream and talk like normal,
Mm-hmm.
which is exactly what the heck we're going to do today because I don't actually have anything that I thought about or prepared beforehand. Today, we're going to talk about stress. I
I love
am
it.
very, very stressed out in life right now.
Me too.
Recently had a car accident. I
Are you
had some.
okay?
I'm perfectly fine. My being is fine. The car that I am borrowing, however, is in a bit of trouble, and I am stuck between that and rent. So like, that whole thing about Americans being one financial crisis away. Turns out that's not far fetched. So it's been a hectic week and a half for me, and I'm kind of like trying to de-stress as much as possible, considering that I'm pretty stressed out. So while I don't have anything formal to talk about, like I said, we're going to talk about stress. As
Mm-hmm.
as just like uh, what it is and what it's good for. And so I guess to start us off, I don't think I want to ask anything super personal, like in terms of what's stressing you out, because I know some of that is really personal.
Yeah.
And similarly for me, it's kind of a similar thing. But what I will ask is, how have you been dealing with your stress lately?
Oh boy. Oh, I imagine. So, quick aside for a second. Your life and my life seems to kind of take similar ups and downs right on the roller coaster. And same thing with my brother. There are many times where I message my brother and I'm having a bad day, and he goes, "You too?" And so we'll talk, and it's like almost the same thing that we're dealing with. Um and I think life's funny like that. Like I wonder if that's an interesting thought. I wonder if people are on different schedules where like there's a group of the population and
Um,
all of you you're due.
you know what?
Um,
That thought kind of makes me think about a contradicting theory I have,
mm,
because I am at odds with the idea or the concept of like our universe, God in our universe, and like what that is and what that looks like. Personally, I have a pretty firm belief that there is, this is all a simulation.
mhm.
We're a bunch of zeros and ones. But one of the competing theories I have is that the gods are actively watching us, and this is just comedic tragedy for them, and that
Mm.
this is nothing more than a comical play of things going wrong and Murphy's Law. And sorry, it's a little bit morbid. Anyway, yeah. So that's what that makes me think of. So schedule, yeah, it's a theater. It's
Yeah.
just that time for the play.
It just made me think of Hercules when you said that, where everyone like that whole movie. But yeah, how am I dealing with stress? Um Thinking about it a lot and at the same time doing things to forget that my reality
Okay,
exists.
so here's the thing. What's interesting about this is that what I was really asking was, how do you deal with stress?
That
Not
is
so
how
much
I'm
how
dealing with
you.
my stress.
Oh,
Literally.
oh no, it's giving out. My microphone.
I
Is my
think about it a
microphone
lot,
still on?
and
Can
then
you
it
hear
becomes
me?
too much, and then I disassociate
Okay,
from reality.
I can't hear you.
But
So if you're pretending right now, you're doing a great job.
you'll do things like
I
actually
I
this is
can't.
something.
I can
Huh?
tell you're talking. I can't hear you. Hold on, hold on, hold on.
No.
I can't.
Oh no. I hope you guys can still hear me. Oh my gosh. This is it's fitting for our
Can you
episode.
hear me now?
Yeah, I've always been able to hear you. Can
You
you hear
can
me?
hear me, but
Yes.
I cannot hear anything on my computer. Let me try something.
Oh boy. We promise you one thing, guys. This will be a very entertaining episode. But
Can you still hear me?
yeah.
Okay, now I can hear. I've plugged
Okay.
in directly to the computer. I'm no longer going through my microphone, which is clearly dying on me.
No.
Um,
So even though you didn't hear me, I was telling all of our listeners that this is gonna be a very entertaining episode. But but what I've noticed, um, I've noticed that a lot of
everything's on
patterns,
fire. Oh, go
everything.
ahead.
No, that too. But have had throughout the years and the way that I dealt with things in childhood is kind of coming up now. Even though as adults you have a lot more room to take action. So one of the things that I've noticed that I do is I will just I don't really talk to people. I just go on my phone and I just scroll. And I don't usually do that, but I've noticed like the frequency of when I do that has like dramatically increased because I just part of my reality that I'm living in right now I just don't really want to deal with. It's really difficult and I'm going to have to make some difficult choices soon. So,
Doom scrolling is a thing. It's a thing that I know and I do very well. I stopped using TikTok because it enabled it
mm,
too much for me.
mhm.
And so now I've moved on to other things like Facebook. Not really much better at all. But
Yeah.
let me reframe the question. Um, what do you think is a positive way in which you deal with or approach stress?
Mm,
I can point out one that I think is really evident,
mhm.
which is the walks that you take.
I
You
was going to
actively
say
go
that.
on walks.
Yeah. I would at this point in my life, I think I rely on that so heavily. I would be a mess without it. I feel like I would just go crazy. Um yeah, because it you know what it is and I figured this out probably 5 to 6 years ago because one of the things I would do more frequently during that time period and especially when I was after I got my license, I would just go and drive places. But what I realized is the reason why I did that isn't because I like driving, because I actually don't like driving at all. Um, it made me, or when I was in middle school, I picked up running. And both of those I would just immediately gravitate to because it made me feel like I was actually taking myself out of the situation. Like I was physically putting distance between what I was dealing with and where I was. Um, I wouldn't even necessarily consider it running away. It was more like giving myself breathing space because a lot of what I've dealt with in life is not something that I could run away from. Um, so it was more of like taking myself outside of the situation so I could think a little bit more clearly, so I could actually breathe. Um, and so I still do that to a point, but that's what my walks definitely. That's how I normally de-stress is I take a walk before work, get my mind set for the day. I take a walk immediately after work. Like that is at this point in my life, that is a non-negotiable. Like got to clear and like reset myself. The other thing that I do is I try and pick one or two goals for the day. So a lot in terms of capacity, but just checking off one thing and being like, cool, like I'm still doing something for myself. That's my main focus right now.
Um, I wonder if there's something to be said with the walks. One of the thoughts that kind of crossed my mind, outside of like obviously the kind of standard thinking, which is physical activity is really good for assisting in processing.
Mhm.
You're getting a lot of stimulation, and I think I wonder how much oxygen you're like forcing up to your brain.
Mm. Mhm.
I wonder, but also like kind of like this cool idea of like physically shedding the person you are in that moment
That's
through
cool.
like when you
Mhm.
think about the fact that we're like made out of 70% water, and like doing
Mhm.
physical activity causing you to sweat is like our version of
Mhm.
shedding in a sense. And like man, you are leaving a portion of yourself literally in the wind as you move, especially with runners or joggers. I think that's kind of a cool concept. Like
That's
theoretically,
wild.
I
No, 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 no. Hold on. But that's so wild because I've said before too that when you feel not great in your body, a lot of times it's when you're not active, you're like sitting, you're sitting with the thing, right? And when you think about water, water gets stagnant when it's not in motion. And so it's so wild that you said like you're kind of shedding it out through like the moisture in your body too, because like I've made that association but just in a different way. Also, I think you're onto something there too, because I think it's I forget if it's like 7 or 10 years, but every somewhere between 7 and 10 years, your body goes through um like a recycle process and you have like all new cells
I
or
want
like
to say
regenerates
it's.
itself.
I feel like I've heard that as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
every 7 years.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually have to look that one up because I've heard that so often.
yeah. I
How
don't think there's anything necessarily true to like that idea that I presented, but like what if it was? Like what if that like in this I mean, you kind of know where I stand on like the idea of magic and real life. I think that line is a lot more blurred than we understand it to be.
mm-hmm.
You know how I feel about magic boxes in the form of like our phones, our cars.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we can press buttons and communicate, we can teleport ourselves to different places just with, the press of a couple of buttons on FaceTime. Like we
Mm-hmm.
can, there's literal, uh, uh, I think this is actually pretty funny. I guess some company constructed something called a portal, and all it is a video feed in the form of a portal that they put out in public places, major public cities. So there's one in New York, there's one in I want to say London somewhere. There's one like there's one in Japan, like so. It's really cool that people can go to these portals and literally see into other entire different like that's that's magical. That's
That's
magic,
cool.
right? So I
Reminds me
think
of oh sorry, go ahead.
no, go for it.
I was just gonna say it reminds me of like if they started doing that for sister cities, cities that are like at the
Yeah,
same geographic location as that spot, but just I forget which line it's on the latitudinal or longitude. I don't know which of the lines, maybe the latitude
it's
lines.
it's a pretty cool concept. What's actually legitimately funny about it is they had to shut it down, especially in New York, because some of the behaviors got I guess people would say offensive.
Mm.
I think it's hilarious, but um, maybe my humor is cruder than most, or darker than most. But that said, relaying it kind of back to what we were talking about, like in the fantastical sense of this world with all this magic that we live in, it is a really cool idea to think that all we need to do to become somebody completely new, refreshed, or different is go for a jog, right?
Mhm.
I really like that idea, that concept, and I wonder if like maybe if it was like presented in that way, I'd be a little more interested in going out and like that type of physical
Mhm.
activity. I'm pretty stationary in my life, so yeah, I think that's a cool concept.
But I greatly that's probably one of my favorite analogies you've ever said though. And it really resonated with me because I feel like that when I'm on the walks. Like I might not sweat a whole lot, but I just feel like whatever version of me was at work or, whenever, like emotionally you might not feel different, but I definitely energetically feel different. Like it's just like it
Well,
kind of like
even
goes on.
emotionally, like it's hard to remain exactly the same
That's
through
true.
that physical process, because like you're literally changing the chemistry within your body.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it's kind of interesting, the fact that we can force such a dramatic change upon us. And I think like it's just a weird way to think about it. I've never considered it before today. Like this is the first time I'm considering the idea. Cause man, like if you told me I could be somebody new just by taking a walk, how many times in your life would you have taken that walk? Like if that's what you were kind of like
Mhm.
brought up on, like you can be somebody completely different if you just do this one thing. If you try this one trick, you'll be rich. If you but like I don't know. I think maybe a part of why I find it like an interesting thought experiment is because when I think about like philosophers, right, like ancient philosophers, one of the things that I'm pretty sure is taught is the fact that a lot of them had very active lifestyles. Um, there was a very active element to their lives. They weren't just sitting in a chair and thinking all day. Um, and I wonder if like going out and exercising is a form of forging the sword for us as human beings. Um, but yeah.
I would agree with that. I follow a lot of billionaires, millionaires, people who are highly successful in their respective fields. And exercise is one of the consistencies across the board, regardless of like what profession. People are on the go or doing something active or make it a point to always work out. Um, and when you think about like I'm curious if there's a direct payoff between how active you are and how successful you are. Similar to if you think about way back in the day where we were living outside and outside all the time. Sure, we weren't really going after money, but did that make people better hunter gatherers? And if everyone's doing it, what's the secondary thing that gives people an edge? Now, that would be kind of interesting
I
to think about
think
it like in our society today.
I think it so I mean, as far as like the first question of like is there a direct correlation? 100% there is. There 1 billion% is. Um, but I wonder if there's like a something to look into beyond what the stated reason is, right? Because a lot of what's said is The correlation is not necessarily with success in it, of itself, but kind of like our conversation last week. It's economics, right? If you are in a place where you can afford to eat healthier, you have a chef that's cooking specific meals for you, right? Like you can find healthy that's tasty and it's easily accessible, right? There's something to be said about growing up on that diet, right? As
Mhm.
adults, we all have the options to choose, right? Like I
Mhm.
chose to get McDonald's the other day. Not take it like that doesn't go on anybody but myself. But um, as children, growing up in a multitude of situations, I feel like there are a lot of kids who are better off if your families are a little more informed. Um, Now, that's kind of like a generalization. I don't know that it's necessarily the rule because I'm sure there are plenty of families or kids that have come from like really rough families who are nutritionally sound all throughout their life. I absolutely believe that, but I do think there is a direct correlation. I wonder. It's kind of hard. It's hard for me to like untie like the concepts between wealth and success, because again, like I just feel like there's time in this world is everything.
I
um
agree with time. I'm more interested in the payoff though. Like does one like for an example, like does 1 hour of exercise equal more wealth? Like are we even able to do that? Because at what point does nutrition and exercise and
I think
growing
that's a
up
good
wealthy,
question.
where does that equal out to people who don't have that? How much is, because I agree with you at time, but also I think the biggest thing is mentality. And are you able to, and I don't mean like, oh, mentality, like strong emotionally, more so too, how are you able to perceive opportunities? And, I've said this, I don't know if it's been on this podcast, but I know we've had conversations where the difference, I think it was the difference between someone who's entrepreneurial and someone who's just successful is opportunities and how good you are at capitalizing and seeing and thinking outside of the box when it comes to opportunities. And I think people who didn't grow up with a lot, who had to find creative ways to pay the bills, help, make ends meet, actually have a leg up in that because while you can grow up in a family that's wealthy or well off or successful, they can give you the mentality of being successful, but being entrepreneurial and having an opportunist mindset, that's something that I think life teaches you.
See, that's a really interesting question. I personally think, because I don't necessarily agree that your lifestyle may make you more opportunistic if you led a harsher life. I don't know where I stand on that statement.
Mm,
But what I am interested in is your thoughts of whether it's a nature or nurture trait. Is this something you're born with, do you think? Like, there are people who are, again, successful, wealthy, have a wealth of time on their hands, and will do nothing with it.
yeah.
And that is, there are people who are handed companies and said, I will give you everything, you just got to run it, and
Mhm.
there's no interest in it, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I guess a question that comes to mind or rises to the front is the idea of, well, what is the difference? Can you teach opportunistic behavior? Is that something that is learned in childhood? Through, well, I don't even know that you could say that, right? Because if you're a child with wealthy parents and you're seeing the opportunities that they're taking, you know, but still choose not to, like, what is the thing
Hmm.
that either teaches opportunity, or you or is it something that you're born with? Because I definitely know people who have grown up in rough situations who are never going to try and start their own business.
Hmm.
It's
But I
just
think
not what
it,
they want to do.
I think it's a little bit of both. So the, I thought about this often. I think throughout my, or well, often throughout my life. There's a particular person that comes to mind that this person's life story, um, from a very, very young age, had to assist with making, and I'm being very like intentionally vague, but had to make ends meet with the parents, um, and some of the life experiences, we're talking like really young, um, probably even like 2, 3. And so one of the skills that the family learned because of these situations that they were in was how to cook. And so knowing this person way later in life and just how this person spoke, thought, looked at different things, and specifically how like advanced that person was in that area, I started, and I've heard other people say similar things that, came from nothing and then ended up being successful. So I do think there's some truth to when you have to do it for survival, you kind of find out whether you're going to do it or you're going to not. But I also think some of that, going back to your question, is nature. So there is a specific skill set that you kind of already have to have, um, in order for you, I think, to be that person that is going to just take the situation and go, I'm going to find a way. But then the rest of it, I think, is nurture, but from an environmental standpoint. So I don't necessarily think it's what your parents teach. I think that's one way, but it could just be like environments they are in, situations that you're put in that then teach you, give you. I think the biggest thing there, if we're not talking about someone who was just handed everything, right? Because you still kind of have to learn there, but there's probably so much margin for mess ups that it's not it's not as harsh of a lesson if something messes up versus somebody who is in a situation where they're pouring their life savings into their business. So I think it's more the applicability of what you know is going to teach you a lot. And that could come from parents. Like I've listened to some people where they've taught their kids. This one guy was like, the best thing you can do for your kids is teach them value. And so he goes, and anything we do, I ask them a question like, well, what's the value? What value are you bringing? How are you going to create value? And I think all of his kids started businesses, and this was a really successful guy, but started businesses when they were young teens. But he's like, I'm not going to give you anything. And he said, my kids' first business was they identified because I was teaching them to see value. I guess they lived by a golf course. They learned that there are so many lost balls, and he's like, they figured out that they could make some money, so they just started going around collecting them and selling them to the neighbors at less than they could get at the golf shop, and that was their first business. Made a couple, thousands of dollars doing that, and then turn that into the next business. So I don't necessarily think that parents being successful is what is going to make the kid successful, but I think it's how they are applying, how the environment around that person is applying the lessons or giving them the information they need, and then giving them the situation in order to practice that lesson. I think knowing something and actually being able to implement it are two different skill sets. You can know things all you want. Um, that would be the person who kind of got handed the business, right? But when you have a chance to apply those lessons, that's when you actually solidify the knowing.
Um, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know that I don't know how, like how far I'm on board. Like for sure, some of it I am, but for some of it, I feel differently, but I
Mhm.
can't exactly define what the differences are. So like I think um as I'm listening and reflecting on this, um I wonder how much of it is love and passion.
Mm.
Um because I have to sit and think about examples of people who are just passionate about the thing that they love, growing up. So for your kind of what you were speaking on in regards to, that person who from a young age cooking was important.
Mhm.
I have to wonder if that was the time where family got together,
Mhm.
or if that was like a meaningful moment in a day or afternoon or night, and that became a really big focal point. And because there were some base skills that were taught within that kind of area, that little bit of extra knowledge and understanding, and then the love for the thing
Mhm.
spurred them in a direction that probably wasn't going to be wandered off of. Um, like if you really love surfing, right? And you absolutely love surfing, but you're absolutely not an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
right? But you surf every day, every waking moment.
Mhm. Mhm.
What are the chances that you will someday have a business that has to do with surfing? Whether
Mhm.
it's you yourself are the business or something related to the thing that is the business. So,
Mhm.
I say that to say, like, I wonder how much of it is not necessarily drive, right? Because I think that's an entirely separate ingredient.
Yeah.
Um, but how much passion, like, so here's what I'm kind of thinking. We as people are buckets, right? We take a lot of information in, we
Mhm.
hold, we pour out, right? um, what needs to be poured into the bucket in order to create um, success,
Mhm.
right? It's a question that everybody kind of has to like consider at some point in their lives, especially if you're a parent, right? Like that's what parents, a lot of parents who are interested in their children do. They try to think about what needs to be poured into the bucket
Mhm.
so that they are successful. um and so passion, I wonder how much, like in a percentage of 0 to 100, what percentage that actually plays in that spurring on in the success. um
Mhm.
have you heard the story of the Japanese baker who who just he has a bread business, like a donut
Wait.
shop or something like that?
Uh-huh.
And he went ahead and created a machine in order to identify the bread, so that it can get sorted properly within his shop.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, yeah, that ended up being used as medical technology. I think it's like I want to say it's the story of MRI machines or some ish like
Mm.
that, where it was. I I want to say I gotta look it up to see how he was able to determine the difference between the different types of bread. It was like measuring the density of something within the bread or some craziness like that, right? But
See,
this go ahead.
uh, well, I thought you were gonna say something a little different, but oddly, kind of like similar. Someone who is so passionate or has been doing something for so long. There was a video. I think they were somewhere in South America, and someone's like, "If you can give me the exact like to the point oh oh uh pounds of bread that I'm gonna request." I will just give you $200 or whatever. And this guy was like, yeah, easy. And like took like 5 seconds and like put that exact amount on the scale. And the guy's like, how do you do this? And he goes, I work with bread every day for like 30, 40 years. Like I know what I'm doing. Or like the contest where someone can perfectly cut something in half and it's weighted evenly on both sides. I think to comment on what you were saying earlier with how much of it is passion, I do think that that plays a role into it, especially if you don't have as much of those entrepreneurial skills built. However, what I think is um, also kind of prevalent. So let's say, for example, you don't have a passion in something, but you're really, really good at it. That I think could be an indication that it's maybe more nature because you might have a certain skill set that you are genetically kind of set up for. Like for example, my uncle, um, he is so good at games. I don't like. I think it took my mom like 20 some years or something before she beat him. And my mom was, if she took a test, like probably borderline genius. And he's also there as well. But I asked him one time, like we were playing like a domino matching game, and I'm like, "How are you so good at all these different games?" And he goes, "It's not that I'm good at it. My brain is just wired differently." So he went on to explain to me that he scores in the 90th percentile for spatial reasoning. And so it's not that he's better at games, but that he is just so good at spatial recognition that he's able to form patterns so quickly. Like he will give you 100 to 150 point lead in Boggle and still win within like 2 rounds. He's just that good. And once he said that, I was like, that makes so much sense. So I think sometimes if it's not something, because I do think that we have passions that start from nature as well, just things we naturally gravitate to. Like one of my first passions was reading in life, and I was been reading or wanting my parents to read to me since I was like as early as I can remember, like 2. That's never changed. But I think if you're naturally good at something and someone's like, "How are you so good at this?" I think that's more nature giving you a genetic boost.
Okay, so um, I think I do agree with a lot of that. Again, like for most of it, I am pretty on board with. I think there definitely is a heavy nature component in there, and I wonder what like if we were to give a percentage to nature, what would it be? Um, I definitely kind of agree that it would be like a I don't know, like maybe
Does it change per person too, though? Now that when you think about it, like let's say someone starts out and they have a huge passion, right? The surfer, they're 80% nature and 20% nurture equals 100%. But someone else starts out with they just had a whole bunch of life examples early on and we're 80 and we're the opposite. Does it really not matter what the percentages are per person as long as life is balancing it out in some way?
well, I think you said something interesting there that kind of gives me pause. Like this idea of like once you hit 100%, then you, you've accomplished the thing, or like you are successful. I wonder like if it's more like um, it is the just the likeliness to churn out success. So like if we were to put it in a bucket and say like even if you were 80%, that doesn't necessarily mean you hit business. It just
Mm-hmm.
means that you've increased your chances at like finding success within business.
Mhm.
100% being like the surefire, which is like that sweet spot of not only are you a genius, but
Mhm.
your family has money and you had a great education and you are super driven in a particular topic, a particular niche that you absolutely love, and it was
Mhm.
encouraged by your family, and
Mhm.
you were put in touch with, like, luck was on your side as you
Mentors.
grew up. You had the mentors, you had the connections within the industry, and so everything just clicked. Because for some
Mhm.
people, the truth of the matter is they have that, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it's just good karma over their lifetimes that they've achieved.
Mhm.
If you believe in that, or maybe it's just they won the lottery in terms of lives. But there are definitely people like that. But the same is true of people who have like 15% chance to have a business that turns out to be success, and they
Mhm.
still manage to do it, right? Like, there are so
Mhm.
many people who capitalized off of like COVID as an example and started businesses who never otherwise would have. They just wanted a cool mask.
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden they have an active business that is making them, or has pushed them in a huge direction of success that they're not likely to fall from. Um, with all that said, were you interested in that bread story that I was telling you earlier?
Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
Okay.
Story time.
So, I this is also a really interesting thing because you heard my explanation of it. My explanation was this dude had a bread shop and he was like he did it for the love of bread, which is what I would do because I love bread. I was completely wrong. Uh, yeah, absolutely wrong. Okay, this is oh man, I really don't want it from this website. Hold on. New Yorker. We'll do the New Yorker. Um okay, so give
Should be a slogan
me,
somewhere. For the love of bread.
for the love of bread, it should be. Okay, I'm going to. This is a long article, so I
Throw
don't
that
want
in
to read it all.
ChatGPT. Summarize.
Um, yeah, I wonder if there's an easy tool to summarize. Okay, well, I'll kind of give the lowdown from what I picked up, which is this dude basically was a programmer, and I guess one of the things that he took on as a, like, what he something he wanted to try and figure out. Actually, let's just go back to that old article. Maybe this is a better way. It is what it is. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read this article from Input. A fascinating account in the New Yorker explains how artificial intelligence used to I, is you was used to identify baked goods at a Japanese pat, 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 pastry. I don't know how to say that word.
Pastry?
Patissserie. It's definitely
Pastry? Pastry?
pastry.
Pat
There's no T after that.
patis
Patisserie,
patisserie?
patisserie, uh, patisserie. I don't
That
know. It just, yeah, how it's now being used to study cancer cells. The man behind the fascinating pastry focused AI known as Bakery Scan is Hisashi Kambe, the owner of the company Brain. From carbonara sandwiches, braided baguettes, donuts, to sourdough leaves, croissants, and other types of bread, Brain's processors achieved a 98% accuracy rate by identifying 55 types of baked goods for
wow.
cancer cells. Kambe told the New Yorker that the system. This article is might as well have been written by AI because it definitely doesn't make sense. Um, they call the system AI scan. It has a 99% rate of identifying cancer cells. Brain has been working on various projects that involve training AI to accurately execute image recognition for 2 decades. It all began by differentiating croissants from bagels. In 2007, a restaurant approached Kambe's company to help it categorize dizzying large varieties of baked items, with an emphasis on sweeter kinds like banana bread, pan dulce, cogno, I don't know what that is, and more. That sounds good. It's the use in cogno. Um, it was a mix of marketing research and love for pastries. So there was love for pastry. There was for the love of bread.
For
Uh,
the love of
com-
bread.
Combe's company's fascination with image recognition that eventually led to the creation of the system that would make checkouts at bakeries swifter. He created this AI imaging system, and all of a sudden, it turns out, well, not all of a sudden, but it turns out that the physical nature of bread is actually surprisingly similar in the structure and
What?
consistency to cancer cells. When you observe cancer cells through a microscope. Um, so moving away from like the actual core technology, the AI, um, really what they're using is deep learning, object recognition. And it was turned to study the nucleus size of cells to find the presence of cancer in human beings. To make the cancer recognition system work at hospitals, Kambe is now trying to improve his AI to perform whole slide analysis, which will allow his AI model to study a group of cells instead of just one, which could save doctors a lot of different time. This article is garbage. Dude went to pastries. He went to
I wonder if that was
bakeries.
supposed to be pastries.
I'm pretty sure that article was written by like I'm pretty sure that's why I didn't want to read it in the first place, because I remember reading the first sentence and being like, "Oh, this is tough." But then the New Yorker article was much, much, much more in depth. Um, but yeah, and end of the day, dude, um, already technologically proficient, went to bakeries, was like, man, there's so many varieties. I really just need
A
my
sorter.
croissants. I need my
Mhm.
croissants and my bagels, to be different.
Both very
Actually,
important.
I don't see the way this article is written. I don't actually believe what it says. What I think happened, and I have to look this up to confirm, but these are two different people, and the article is mixing it up. There was one person who owned a pastry shop who
Mm,
needed to make the checkout system faster. It was
mm,
another person that got hired who was already interested in developing technology. They worked together to develop this system to sort different types of bread in a checkout line and
mhm.
basically automate the system. And then that technology turns out to be really useful for cancer research, or identifying cancer cells. That's what I
You
think happened. But
you know the one thing that I just kept thinking about the entire time that you were reading that?
chocolate
Why is
croissant would be
this
so good
not
right now. Oh,
huh?
okay. Sorry, you had something different.
Wait, what were you
Yeah.
saying?
I was saying chocolate croissant would be so good right
Oh
now. Uh,
gosh, yes. Like just croissants, bread in general. For the love of bread.
For the
Um,
love of bread.
but why do more shops not have this? This seems like it would save a lot of time. Like I was thinking of New York City with just for the more famous pastry and bakery shops, you have a line basically all day that could probably be sped up with that.
Yeah, I wonder. I think there's probably a difference of culture almost. I kind of want to say like
Oh,
like getting things that are coming off of a conveyor belt. I think is not necessarily the culture that we kind of experience out here as much as you may find it. Like think about like the conveyor belt sushi. Like
yeah.
that's a exciting thing for us, where out there you're getting
Mhm.
ramen delivered to you in a isolated booth, so you don't have to see,
Mhm.
think, or hear
Mhm.
anybody else, and it just comes speeding down the line and ends up right at your booth for you to take off of the belt and put on like in front of you to eat. Like I think that there's a
Uh-huh.
cultural difference in terms of like how we I guess check out actually. um,
I was just thinking about grocery stores though. Well, I guess we are even getting rid of the conveyor belts in grocery stores. But what I thought was like someone that just had a conveyor line and they would just package it. Um, but I guess that defeats the purpose of even having that machine anyways, unless it was help checkout.
Maybe it wasn't even like any combination of that. Maybe they were literally going to build the conveyor belt. Like I gotta actually read the New Yorker article and like try to make sense of it, because I think
Mhm.
I've been working off of like skim pieces here and there, and it's like this is what it looks like when you are when
Is there a
you
picture?
are
Like, or was there a picture in the New York article?
no, there was no
Oh,
picture.
interesting.
um
'Cause
yeah, it
I
was
can't
just,
imagine it would be a long conveyor belt. I mean, unless they modified it for medical use. I was
or
thinking more
maybe
just like a checkout line.
maybe a checkout. Yeah, maybe it was just like a camera set up on the checkout or something like
Mhm.
that. I don't
Mhm.
know, but I will find out for the world, for
No, no, no,
for
no, no.
all of you,
For the of bread.
for the love of bread. I'm gonna find out for the love of bread because fun. Like I love it for the love of bread. I
Oh.
wouldn't have made it to this weight class without it.
Well,
Um,
just made me think of the Italy trip where we had one rule for Italy
we
and
followed it.
we followed it, a gelato a day, but that also equaled at least a bread a day.
You know what's crazy? We doubled
And
up on that rule.
oh, we
We had
did.
gelato in the mornings and
Yeah.
at nights. We had gelato
Every
twice a day, every day.
every day.
Yeah, that trip was wild.
Oh, so good.
Um,
And we had pizza at least once a day too.
yeah, the pizza
Like,
was something, man. That
and
was
then
so
what was the
good.
one you and Z got? What was it, like a pizza with an egg on it or something? It was like a large,
Yeah, that
drippy pizza,
I
drippy in
got
a good way.
one. I got one called Vesuvius because I was like, how am I gonna go to Rome? How am I gonna go to Rome? And they've got a pizza called Vesuvius.
Yeah.
Vesuvius, lend me your power, Vesuvius.
Let
Lend
me
me
know
your
it
power.
here.
Um, and not get the Vesuvius pizza. I had to do it. It's very touristy. Had to do it anyway. It was dope.
I do remember it being pretty good.
Yeah,
But
it was.
and to circle back to close the loop earlier, 7 to 10 years is what the internet says for all cells kind of being regenerated in your body.
7 to 10. You were right on
Hmm.
both counts. That's
Hmm.
pretty fire.
Unless it's
Um,
just taking, unless some websites say 7, some say 10, and then AI was like,
I can't trust anything these days.
7 to
Oh my goodness.
10.
I'm not even like a hardcore conspiracy theorist, but like, man, I'm having a tough time out there in the world discerning fact from fiction.
I agree
Um,
with you on that because if
yeah.
It was maybe only a couple months ago where the AI post started generating on Google. And I was like, well,
Yeah,
that's helpful. But also, I am taking this and understanding that I probably can't trust this fully. And it's giving me a synopsis of
dude,
what it finds. But
there's a ton of examples of questions you ask, and it gives you a blatantly wrong answer with the
stop.
correct answer right underneath it from an actual web page. Like it's mind blow. Like AI is, it's scary because it's people can easily people find it or trust it a little too easily. I think it's a little more dangerous than we currently understand, and has, excuse me, has potential for really rough misuse. I mean, there's
hmm
already been some crazy examples of like, oh man, this isn't looking good. But AI is kind of rough, man. I got to figure out how to make use of it and make money off of it before we're on to the next thing. I feel like um, we kind of roll in waves of technology. So like
hmm
there were a lot of people who made a lot of money on like Bitcoin, right, when that
hmm
was first coming out and people didn't really understand. And then it was like, what was the next like really big technology phenomena that kind of like took everybody by storm? I want to say it was um like TikTok, I think was a really big one. Like Vine and TikTok kind of
hmm
took, and a lot of people came up on that by storm. And
hmm
even like that's still going on currently, I guess you could say. Or like YouTube as an example. That was like there was a period in time where people were finding out that you can make money off of YouTube, and like there were a lot of really big names that were made. I mean, look at your Mr. Beast, right?
hmm
Um,
You
yeah,
know, Bitcoin is, there's only two things, two moments where I really wish that I would have capitalized on. So the
me
first
too.
one, Tesla. Back, this was at the very start of COVID, and I was like, Tesla stock is going to quadruple, like, it's going. And at the time, I had already invested as much of my money as I was willing to into the market. But I still had, I wish I had like debated for a brief moment in time taking out of my 401k. Now, when you do that, it is a loan you have to pay back. But I was like, I could literally just take this out and I'm going to make my money back in like 3 months and put it right back in and have like quadruple the money. And I didn't do it. And it happened exactly how I knew it would. And I was like, God. The other,
Mm,
I was, I think I was either in high school or we were in FCC. One of the two. So FCC is the community college that was around where we grew up, and Bitcoin was at $13, and that was my first exposure to Bitcoin. There was some random web article that popped up on my phone, and I just was reading it, and I'm like, oh my god, this makes a ton of sense. I should invest in this, and it's going to be big. But you know why I didn't? I thought that it was going to take until I was 65 to like actually get to a point where I thought I was going to get to. And I look back and I'm like, even at that moment where I was working, I could have put 100 some dollars in. And it was just my mentality back then of like, oh, but $100 is so much. And I'm like, I don't think that way anymore. And now I'm just like, what's the value of this? Okay, I'm going to do it. And I look back and I'm like, I had a moment. That
well,
was,
you know who
uh,
was talking about that in junior year of high school?
oh, you were?
Knock.
Really?
Yeah,
That makes a lot of sense.
he put me onto it. as a junior. That was so long ago. Yeah, yeah, that was a while back.
What was the price
But
back then?
no idea. We were
Mm,
just talking. It led to a really interesting conversation because I kind of did what I always do, and I just kept asking questions
mhm,
because he was super knowledgeable about a lot of different things when it came to technology in particular.
mm,
And so like I kind of got into the conversation of like how computers work and the zeros and ones behind it because I didn't understand like crypto at all.
mm,
So like it kind of just led down this kind of like pipeline of questions, and he had answers for a lot of it actually.
I'm
Super
not
super smart
surprised.
dude. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, that dude went on to do things, still doing things. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know that necessarily I'm the guy who's going to capitalize off of AI specifically. I don't know.
mhm,
I think I walk a very strange path in life, especially right now, and I don't know that I've found the thing. I know that don't want to. I don't want to spend my life looking. Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Always looking for
I've
the next opportunity and then like, ooh,
not
like the
even not even necessarily the next opportunity, but like
mhm,
I wish, you know what I wish, honest, like um very very forward kind of a thought for the world at large for me to just put out there. And hopefully it doesn't come back to bite me later on in the future. But I really wish that I developed a love for something, a little earlier on. Like I'm still looking, and I don't want to keep looking in my life for the thing that I love, my surfing.
mhm,
And I worry a lot at this stage in life that I'll ever find a thing that I love with so many distractions, and so many things that are pleasant, but I don't necessarily have the attention span for. Um, it's kind of a weird place, but like I feel like, if I was that surfer, right, where would I be? Or if I really loved bread enough to be inspired, or not inspired, but like just bake my butt off
mhm.
until somebody was like, you need to have a bakery, right? And then the business portion would have kicked in and been like, oh, I do need a bakery. I can do this, right? Like
Would you
I
say
don't.
you're baking your buns off?
Yeah,
Aha.
yeah. And so I don't feel comfortable in knowing what that is for myself yet. Like as an example, I know for you, you have crystals, and you
Mhm.
have motivational services,
Yeah.
and that's kind of your thing, that like that's what you want to like breathe and live
Mhm.
on a daily basis, with nature heavily mixing.
Mhm.
I haven't really found that for myself yet. Like I know there's some major things that I love in this world, but I maybe I already this is also a fear of mine, and hopefully this doesn't come to bite me in the future either. But I almost wonder if I've already come across the thing that I was meant to, and I've missed it. Like it came and I didn't give it the attention that it needed, or I wasn't in the place where the neurons were to connect, and that thing is forever gone. That's something that I kind of not stress over, but I kind of worry about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I I'm a little surprised to hear you say that because I mean, you're so creative and you have a passion for quite a few things, I think, but I don't know if the full picture has come into fruition for you yet. But one thing that I thought about when you were talking. So the flip side of finding your passion and doing what you love, right, is learning the life lessons and the stuff we label as like not so fun. But the thing about it, if we are going to apply something that applies to lessons to this side as well, it's going to come back. So with a lesson, if you don't learn it the first time,
Oh,
you don't
it'll, yeah,
learn it the second time,
absolutely.
and you don't learn it the third time,
Absolutely.
it's you
Yeah.
already know it's coming back for a fourth time.
You know
So
what?
like I
There's
think
there's comfort in that. There
yeah.
is.
Like I think
Yeah.
passions are the same way. Like and the thing is like sometimes you need breadcrumbs before you can like dive in head first face down, right? Like sometimes it's like you just need little bits of exposure
Yeah.
and then later on you're like, "You know what? Let me go back to the thing." Or it's like life is complex and we're working through different things at different times. And so what I've found, like take reading for example. I was such an avid reader all throughout my life. But I think I also realized that I was going through some very, very dark times and times that I did not have power to change as a child. And so reading was like my thing, my escape. No one gave me a hard time for reading because like reading's good. And so after I moved out, and even when I started to get more into like adulthood where like I had a little bit more freedom, reading kind of went on the back burner. And I remember I was looking at my shelves. At one point, I had had over 400 books, and I looked and I was like, "When's the last time I read?" And it had been a couple of years. And so what I did instead is I read through to see which books I was going to keep. And now that I actually have more capacity, I'm enjoying it for the sake of enjoying reading. So like I don't think that your passions are what's it sounds so cliche, but I don't think the things that are meant for you are going to pass you by. It might be that to really dive in and appreciate them more, you needed other skill sets that seemed like they derailed you, but actually are going to allow you to have more freedom with the passion. Like, have you ever heard the expression that um being rigorous or being organized is freeing? It's because if you have that like there's another word that's like escaping my brain for the actual quote, but essentially what it means is or not diligence, like putting restrictions on yourself is actually freeing because it narrows your focus and actually gives you what you need to utilize your freedom in the way you want to. Like not spending money on everything allows you to eventually be able to spend your money on everything, or not taking the time to do everything allows you to dedicate the time to what's most valuable. Same thing applies. So maybe some of where you're working through now, whether they're lessons or skill sets that you're building, are going to allow you to interact with that passion in a completely different way that you wouldn't have had before. Like, I mean, just think about your business. Like, you did business a certain way to start, and now you're about to go into it again. And I have to imagine that there's probably more freedom in a sense because some of those base skills are already done.
Yeah, I would, and it was actually kind of like the next leading thought,
Mm,
is that there are two thoughts that come to mind. One is you're absolutely right in the sense that like now that I've practiced like this more business mindset in the past, even though things didn't kind of turn out the way I wanted, there are definitely a lot of pitfalls that I'll be avoiding as I venture into this kind of thing again, and it's again like it's interesting to think of, well, interesting for me to think about,
mhm,
because I while I do lament not having found like the dedication, like, or the love for something to dedicate myself to, um I do think that whatever the whatever the portion that you would pour into the bucket to create success, whatever the portion that is necessity that you need to pour in, um, I'm that's in there because
Mhm.
I can definitely say that success is imminent. It's not
Mhm.
something that I can afford to let get away. It's not something that is out of my grasp, control, or anything like that. Success is mine. It's already here, and it's, you know, it's in my future. It's steeped in my future. And so when I think about, you know, the need for success, however you may define it, um, I think it's going to come about of necessity. I wonder for creators out there, or not just creators, but people who have businesses, how much of the sprinkle of necessity you needed. Like, what's,
Mm.
again, like, I kind of feel like the percentages are really interesting to consider. Like, what's the percentage of passion? Like, what if you don't have a passion for a thing, but you have passion for business, right?
Mhm.
What if you don't have passion for business, but you have a passion for economics? You know, like,
Mhm.
it's, I wonder what's the, you know, what kind of percentages you can play with that, or the percentages of like necessity. Like, I need to be successful because there are things that I care about, and I need to show my care and my dedication to them. Like, there, for me personally, I think when success comes, one of the big reasons I'm going to say that I'm successful is because there are things that are treasure that are beyond myself, that I value too much to to let kind of reside in kind of squalor. You
Mhm.
know, there are things in my life that deserve success, and I have to be the one to bring it, or, you know, it may never see it. So yeah, I don't know, kind of weird, and I kind of wonder like where everybody else is with that. So that'll be kind of my question for the day, is like, if you are considering success, your future endeavors, your current endeavors, your past endeavors that you found success in, what do you think those percentages are for you? Like, if you had to break it down, from like necessity, passion, nature, nurture, uh, maybe a specific memory or memories. You know, what are the percentages of your kind of makeup that led you to your success?
That's a good question. I have one I have a question for you while I think of my question, but do you think that looking at success as like a duty that you like, you said that like success, you can't afford to have success get away from you. Do you think that that perception is kind of blocking the passion because you might be doing something you're not necessarily passionate about? Going back to what you first said about, I don't know if I've found my passion yet.
I
I think
would
that's kind of interesting.
agree to I would agree to a point. I think
Yeah.
the answer is complicated, like most things in
Mm,
this world.
yeah.
Um, I think there probably is this idea of success that I want to achieve, and because like that idea is so firm in my mind that like I'm
Mm,
unable to see the things that may spur me on or motivate me as successes. And so it almost is like I'm stealing motivation from myself. I
mm,
think there's probably some reasonable amount of that happening within my life, if I'm going to be um, very kind of like third person looking in.
mhm,
Um, but I also think that, and I don't know that this is third person looking in, but I also think it's somewhat necessary.
Mm-hmm.
um, because for me, I think I have a hard time. I think there are a lot of people who can relate with this actually. I have a really difficult time doing things for myself. Um, and I don't know if that comes, it's not like selflessness that comes from, right? But if there are things on the line, I can act. If there are people that need me, I can be there. Um, but if there's no one around, I wouldn't be social. You know what I mean? Like I don't know
So it
if that
does.
makes sense.
I find it interesting because it's almost like you need to be in a survival state in order to, because like when I say survival state, like we think of survival state like everything's hit the fan, not for the love of bread, like there's nothing like that's stopping the chaos and every like a survival state is very covert sometimes. Survival state could literally be you experienced a situation once in your life and it led you to feel so either deprived or anxious or like dependent, mostly when you're a kid, right? Because you literally are dependent. um that's has never been kind of worked through. And so what I have found to be true in my life is when I'm doing when I'm taking action because like I absolutely have to, it's almost like I'm replaying out survival states. And because I'm so used to having to act and having to be engaged in survival states, when you're left in an area where that's not really occurring, um, it's a lot harder to do it for yourself if your perception, your emotions, your very being has been solidified and um, has been focused on something external to yourself for majority of your life. It's almost like it needs that external, like whatever person, situation, thing to exist because you were always attached to something externally. And at least I found, and I'm not saying you, but some things of this might resonate with you because we had um, some similar things growing up. But I found like when it's just for me, it's more difficult sometimes to take that action because you don't have that normal motivator, which was in survival.
I think there's probably a combination of things, and that plays a part into it.
Mm,
Like um, I think comfort is a really big thing that I struggle with in life.
mhm,
I
yeah.
think I'm in my lifetime. I've found that I can find comfort in a lot of places. I can find comfort in discomfort.
Mhm,
Um, and in my personal belief, I've said this to you before in conversations, but I think comfort is a killer.
mm, mhm,
I've said that many a time in my life. And I firmly believe that there's a time and place for comfort, but comfort can be a absolute deadly force in your life if you're not careful with which you regard
mhm,
it or make use of it. Like use it for stress relief, awesome. Use it for recovery, awesome. But like comfort can sometimes be very stagnating as a power.
yeah.
It's a very strong holding power. And I think a personal struggle of mine, and again, you know, I'm saying all of this real openly, right? So I hope it doesn't come back to bite me. But one of the things that I feel like I have a pretty big struggle with is my ability to become comfortable in discomforting situations in
Mm,
others in places where other people would be spurred on by
mhm,
their situation. I can be okay, and that's
Yeah.
sometimes a little scary, even for me when I take that third person perspective. Like
Mhm.
I'm uncomfortable with the level of comfort that I have within discomfort. Like it's a whole thing. So like I think there's a really big piece there, and so for me, part of the reason why I say something to the nature of I can't afford to not find success in my ventures. Like I can't
Mhm.
afford not to, is
That makes sense.
because if I don't have that spurring, if I don't have that almost desperation, um, I don't know that I would move, and
Hmm.
that's
Mhm.
scary. That's
Mhm.
terrifying. Like to be the person who's okay with stagnation. I think that's a deeply terrifying thing for me.
I think what how you feel is very normal though. And I it was really touching for me to hear you say that comfort is something that's a struggle because I can heavily empathize with you. I think one of the earliest storylines and areas that I had to work through was comfort because I didn't get the comfort that I needed in a variety of different ways growing up, and I didn't realize how deep that was. And like you, when you say you can be comfortable in the discomfort, I'm right there with you. And it's almost like, yeah, like you know that it's not normal when you're like third party looking at yourself in the discomfort, but at the same time, you're like, no, I'm good. Like, I can live here. And it's like, oh,
Like
yeah,
bro, are you
yeah,
for real right now? Like,
yeah.
oh
And
man, I
and I
yes.
have so much love and empathy for myself because I'm like, and the reason why I told you I was like, hey, that's normal is because for people who grew up in, I would say it doesn't even have to be a traumatic situation. I know you and I both had our traumatic pasts, but I think when there's any type of neglect, and it could even be you not being seen, even you could have had the most loving parents, but maybe you realize later that like you weren't seen. Whatever that thing is, it is normal then to be so okay with discomfort because that was your normal. So like the effort then becomes making that not your normal. And so like that's the real struggle, and I honestly think that it's way more common. Like if we polled people or whoever's listening to this, I guarantee you there's going to be people that are like, yeah, yeah, like I'm right there with you. Like that's me. Like I just don't think we talk about it enough though. That it's not that like we always say that like, oh, I'm weird, or oh, like, oh, I just like I don't know, I struggle with that. And it's like you're not struggling with that. And how you're acting is very, very, very normal. It's just that what you were exposed to and what you had to like accept was not normal. And it takes so much effort to turn that around. So I empathize with you. I'm right there with you. Going
What's
through the same.
okay? So here's something wild to kind of like I don't want to segue into another topic because we gotta end this, but um I you spurred me on in my thought. This is completely separate. One of the topics that I was actually um I forgot about this. Earlier in the week I thought about this and I was like I should come up with an idea of a topic. The topic that I was gonna bring to the table was something along the lines. My week has just been so stressful that
Mm.
it's lost to time, but the remnants are there. Um, it was something along the lines of I do remember. What is the weird thing that you do that you think is weird, but actually makes you a main character in your story?
Oh,
That was gonna be my question, and we may want to revisit it.
yeah, yeah,
Let's
yeah.
not jump into it because
Yeah,
that's
no. Oh,
there's
that's so good. No, that
um
I think for because we usually have just been switching off topics. We didn't discuss it. We just kind of
yeah.
happened, and it's been working for us
I'd be
because we
down.
both have,
I would be down.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But like, for your next episode, I think that would be a really good
yeah,
one. Or your next topic, I think that would be so good because I feel like both of us could learn a lot about each other just by speaking out loud different things that we've said about ourselves that are weird or, you know, oh, this is weird, but like secretly, like you really like that about yourself or you enjoy doing it. Like I do have a couple, but I'm gonna save those. Um, so my question, so John was asking about what percentages do you think you need to fill your cup or fill up your percentage in order to be successful. I'm going to ask you because I genuinely like learning and no two people have the same uh, life. I'm going to ask you guys, what is that one moment, whether it was a person, um, nature versus nurture, or an environment, or a situation that taught you the most about your success? I think we're going to get some really, hopefully, really interesting nuggets of truth there on both accounts.
bruh. I can't wait till we're ancient
I
and we
know.
look back at this episode because we're like, let's just run through the archive and we're like, and we laugh at our struggles. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
cannot wait for that day to come where we're like, oh man, it was so small and we didn't
Yeah.
understand.
Or,
Yeah, yeah.
when people are like, oh gosh, every time I ever ran across somebody in my life that was like, don't you wish you could just be a kid again? And I was like, absolutely not. Like,
Absolutely
we had
not. Yeah,
two different
yeah,
experiences. I'm glad to be grown and I will
yeah.
never go back there. Like, and I just look at them and I'm like, I must, I love that for you, but no.
As as an adult, in my recent life, I had to, in my opinion, go back to being a kid for a short amount of time when my life restarted, and can confirm, no, no way.
Yeah.
I, I would rather do anything else. No.
I have been doing anything else because that has been a slightly recent option, and I'm like,
Oof, oof,
no,
oof,
no,
oof. Yeah, 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 yeah.
no. Bless you, love you, but no.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
thanks for being here, guys. I hope this was helpful. Honestly, I just hope it makes you guys feel more connected, closer, and know that yeah, things might just be way more normal than you think. It's the circumstances that you were in that were definitely not normal. But love you guys. Take care, and we will talk to you later. Dive
Peace.
headfirst, face down. Bye, guys.
Bye.